The insult heard across the stars. The hall of the Galactic Council was filled with lights, colors, and voices that echoed across the chamber. Species from 1,000 worlds had gathered, their robes glittering, their eyes sharp, their pride heavy. They sat in high seats of power, looking down on Earth's single representative, as though he was nothing more than dust. Ambassador Elias Marin of Earth stood straight in the center, wearing a simple dark suit. He carried no golden crown, no glowing staff, no alien jewels. He carried only the weight of his people, a weight heavier than any empire in the room could imagine. The supreme speaker of the council rose, her voice sharp like a blade. "Humanity is reckless," she declared. "They are scavengers, parasites feeding on scraps of others. They copy our technology. They spread like disease. And worst of all, they call themselves equal. This council finds humanity guilty of arrogance. From this day forward, humans will hold no right to colonize, no right to trade, no right to speak among the stars. Let it be known, humanity is an insult to the galaxy." Laughter filled the chamber, cruel and endless. Some pounded the tables with their claws. Others hissed with delight. The word insult burned across every screen, recorded in every tongue. To them, it was the end of Earth's dream. To them, it was a warning to all species that dared to rise above their place. Ambassador Marin did not bow. His hands trembled slightly, but not from fear. His eyes moved from alien face to alien face, seeing the joy in their mockery. Every laugh was fuel, every insult was fire, and deep within his chest, a storm began to build. He raised his hand, waiting for silence. It did not come, so he spoke anyway. His voice steady, his words simple. If survival is an insult, then humanity accepts it. If defiance is a curse, then humanity carries it proudly. You will learn this truth, not by my words, but by what follows. The chamber quieted for only a moment, confused by his tone, then more laughter, louder this time. Rolling like thunder, a reptilian lord shouted, "What will you do, human? Throw stones at our fleets? Bleed in silence as you always do?" The others laughed harder, believing the matter was closed, believing the human beaten. But Marin had already turned away. As he walked from the chamber, he pressed 2 fingers to the small communicator hidden in his sleeve. His words were not for the council, but for his people waiting far away. "Phase 1, he whispered. The signal carried through encrypted channels, through silent relays hidden on forgotten moons. Across the void of space, entire fleets stirred awake, back on Earth. Old shipyards lit up like dawn. Engines roared to life in the underground caverns where ships had slept in shadows. On distant colonies, men and women gathered weapons forged from both human steel and stolen alien alloys. The insult had not broken humanity. It had sharpened them. Marin reached the great doors of the council hall, his figure small against the massive arches of alien stone. Guards sneered as he passed, some spitting at the floor near his boots. He did not stop, he did not answer. He only carried the insult with him like a blade. Because he knew something they did not. The galaxy had just declared war, but they did not realize it, and Earth was ready to answer. Outside the council station, the stars stretched wide and endless. The great banners of alien empires flew high, their ships circling like predators, but somewhere beyond the outer rim, in places the council no longer watched, humanity's shadow fleets were waiting. Ships built from salvage, from forgotten wrecks, from human desperation and human genius. They had no beauty, no polished crowns of empire, but they had teeth, sharper than the galaxy expected. As Marin's shuttle departed, he looked out of the viewport at the swirling lights of the stars. For centuries, humanity had been called weak, desperate, primitive. Now they had been called an insult. And yet, in that word, there was power, because insults could be answered. And humanity had learned long ago how to answer in the only way they knew, by surviving, by striking, by refusing to kneel. Back in the council chamber, the laughter still rang out, but hidden in the deep silence of space, a storm had already begun to move. The insult had been heard, and soon the galaxy would learn what it meant to call Earth an enemy. Whispers in the dark. The insult spread across the stars like fire. Every channel carried the words of the Galactic Council, replaying them again and again. Humanity is an insult. The message echoed on every world, every station, every screen. For most species, it was entertainment, a cruel joke told at humanity's expense. But in the dark corners of space, whispers began to grow. Not all who heard the insult laughed on. The mining colonies of the Outer Rim, aliens enslaved for generations, paused their work. They replayed the human ambassador's words, the calm defiance in his voice. If survival is an insult, then humanity accepts it. Those words touched something inside them, something buried and forgotten. Some whispered to each other, if humans dare to fight, maybe we can too. Meanwhile, deep beneath the surface of Earth, vast caverns shook as engines roared to life. Hidden shipyards glowed with the light of 1,000 forges. Ships once thought abandoned now stirred, patched together with human steel and alien scraps. They were not polished like the Council's fleets. They were ugly, scarred, brutal machines, but they were alive and they were ready. In secret training camps on forgotten moons, men and women drilled in silence. They wore no bright uniforms, only black armor and old helmets. Their weapons were rough, many stolen, some built from scavenged parts, yet in their eyes burned something no alien fleet had resolved. Every soldier carried the insult like a wound, and every wound was waiting to be repaid, but not everyone believed in the great cities of Earth. Some leaders shook their heads. We cannot fight the galaxy, they said. We will be destroyed. Fear clung to them, but the common people did not share it. Fishermen, miners, engineers, farmers, all of them whispered the same thing. They laughed at us. Now we will show them. Far away, on a dead world called Karos, an alien spy crept through the ruins. He had followed strange signals, faint whispers of human activity. At first, he thought it was nothing, but then, in the shadows, he saw them ships, massive and silent, hidden beneath the broken crust, hundreds of them, their hulls painted black, their engines dark. They looked like predators sleeping, waiting for the moment to strike. The spy's hands shook as he recorded the images. He knew what the Council believed, that humans were weak, scattered, harmless. But what he saw here told a different story. He fled before the humans could notice him, but fear already gripped his heart. The whispers in the dark were true. Humanity was preparing for something far greater than survival. Back on Earth, Ambassador Marin stood in a hidden command center. Before him stretched maps of the galaxy, glowing with red lines and markers, each one a plan, each one a step in the dance of war. His generals, some scarred from old battles, stood at his side. They spoke little, their voices low, their eyes sharp. They knew time was short. Every day the Council laughed. Humanity grew stronger. Every insult sharpened their will. Phase 1 is complete, a commander reported. Our fleets are in position. Our colonies are armed. The slaves are listening. Marin nodded, his face grim. Good, he said. Then it begins. Even as he spoke, messages spread across the galaxy. Not from the Council, but from Earth. Broadcasts slipped through. Hidden channels carried on stolen signals. The words were simple, repeated in every tongue. You called us an insult? Now we answer, survive if you can. On slave worlds, the broadcasts spread like lightning. Chains felt heavier. Masters looked weaker. And in the silence of the night, hope was born. Not hope in their rulers, not hope in the Council, but hope in the insulted race called human. In the deep void, where no light reached, humanity's shadow. Fleets moved into formation. Engines hummed low. Shields whispered awake. They were not seen. They were not announced, but they were there, waiting. The galaxy thought the insult had ended the matter. They did not realize it had only begun, Ambassador. Marin looked into the dark. His reflection glimmered faintly in the glass. Behind him, the words of the council still echoed in his mind. An insult to the galaxy. He whispered to himself, his voice steady. No, we are not an insult. We are the storm. And in that storm, whispers grew louder. Whispers of rebellion. Whispers of vengeance. Whispers of survival. Soon, they would no longer be whispers. They would be fire. Asterisk. The first strike the galaxy slept in comfort. Believing the insult had ended humanity's rise, the council celebrated its power, drinking and boasting that Earth was broken. But in the silence of forgotten space, humanity's answer was already moving. The first strike was ready. A fleet of black ships slipped from the shadows of a dead star. Their hulls were jagged, scarred, and silent. Each ship carried men and women who had lived their whole lives under the weight of alien laughter. They carried no banners, no royal crests, only the mark of Earth, a single blue circle painted on steel. Their target was not random. It was a slave world called Veyros, a planet of iron mines and burning skies for centuries. The council had chained entire species there, generations born and died in the dust. Never seeing freedom, the council believed the planet untouchable. No one had dared strike at it until now. Captain Ardenlock stood on the bridge of the lead ship. The Resolute, his jaw was tight, his voice steady as he looked at his crew. Remember the insult, he said. Remember their laughter. Today we answer. Today we strike. Fleet moved in silence, slipping through the council's patrol lines. They had studied alien codes, stolen navigation charts. Where others saw walls, humans saw cracks. And through those cracks they came. Veyros turned slowly below them, its surface glowing red with furnaces. Towers of smoke rose like scars. Alien. Overseers whipped slaves in the mines, their screams lost in the roar of machines. None of them expected the sky to burn that day. The first human torpedoes fell like thunder. They struck the overseer stations, whipping them apart in fire. Slaves looked up in shock as their masters' ships exploded above the pits. The humans did not fire on the slaves. Every strike was careful. Every shot precise. Overseer barracks, guard towers, command hubs all turned to ash. Panic spread across the council's defenders. They had been told humans were weak, untrained, primitive. But the precision of the attack told another story. It was not rage. It was not chaos. It was war, planned and sharpened. Captain Locke's voice echoed through the comms. Open the gates, he ordered. Across the planet, slave pens shattered. As human troops stormed in, doors fell, chains broke. Slaves who had never seen freedom stared at the soldiers in black armor. At first they recoiled, afraid these were new masters. But then they heard the words, "You are free." The soldiers said, "You are free because humanity does not kneel." A silence fell, then a roar. A cry of millions. Slaves lifted their fists, their claws, their tendrils, their voices. They joined the fight, turning on their overseers. The planet that had been silent for centuries now shook with the sound of rebellion. An alien commander tried to rally his fleet above Veyros. He screamed to his soldiers that this was a small uprising, a moment of madness. But then he saw the human flagship rise from the clouds. The Resolute cut through his formation like a knife. Alien ships burst into flame one by one. Their crews panicked, fleeing into the void. The commander realized the truth. This was not madness. This was the beginning. When the last overseer fell, Captain Locke stood before the freed masses. His armor was scarred, his hands bloody, but his voice carried strength. "Listen well," he said. "They called us an insult. they said we were. Nothing. But today, you are free because of that insult. Today, humanity answers not with words, but with fire. An alien slave, her body thin and her eyes wide, knelt before him. She trembled as she spoke, her voice raw. They feared you were animals, she said. Now I see you are monsters, but monsters who free us. The word spread quickly, whispered from mouth to mouth. Some feared the humans, others revered them, but none could ignore them. The first strike was not just a battle. It was a message written in fire. Across the galaxy, reports flooded in. Humans have attacked Veros. The slaves are free. The overseers are dead. Council chambers erupted in panic. Some demanded retaliation. Others whispered that perhaps the humans had grown too dangerous to mock. The laughter that had once filled the hall was gone, replaced by fear and far away. In the shadows of deep space, humanity's fleets prepared again. The first strike was only the beginning. The insult had been answered with fire, and fire was only the first step of survival. The broken alliance, the news of Veros, spread like a storm across the galaxy. Screens flickered with images of human ships hovering over the burning mines. Crowds of freed slaves filled the ruins, their fists raised to the sky, shouting a single word: freedom. What had been thought impossible had been done. The humans had struck, and they had won. In the council chamber, silence reigned for the first time in centuries. The same voices that once mocked Earth now trembled. The reptilian lords hissed in anger, their tails lashing against the marble floors. The insect queens shrieked about rebellion, spreading like fire. Others sat in heavy silence, their eyes thoughtful, their claws tapping. The insult had turned into something far worse, an example. The supreme speaker slammed her staff on the floor, her voice sharp. This is treason. Humanity has broken the laws of the stars. They must be destroyed before others follow there. Madness. But her words did not unite the chamber. Instead, cracks began to spread. One counselor, a tall avian with silver feathers, spoke softly. Perhaps they were right to strike. We enslaved countless worlds. We called them an insult. Now they answer. Maybe it is not humanity we should fear, but the truth they carry. Gasps filled the hall. Never before had anyone defended Earth. Factions began to form. Some demanded war. Others whispered of negotiations. And some, in the deepest shadows, wondered if perhaps they should stand beside Earth, because if the humans could free Veros, maybe they could free more. Meanwhile, on the freed world, Captain Arden Locke stood with Ambassador Marin. The air still stank of smoke and blood, but hope was alive. The freed slaves gathered around them, thousands kneeling in respect. Marin raised his hand. His voice carried across the ruins. They called us an insult, he said, but that insult gave us strength. They believed we would bow, but we rose, and now you rise with us. The crowd roared. Alien voices of every kind joined together. A sound the galaxy had never heard. For the first time in history, different species shouted not for the council, not for their masters, but for freedom. Yet not all was unity. In the council fleets, fear turned to rage. An admiral of the Kreth Empire pounded his claws against the table. We should have crushed them long ago, he growled. They were scavengers. Now they are wolves. If we delay, their shadow fleets will grow stronger. But not every admiral agreed. Others saw the fire of rebellion in their own slave worlds. They wondered if humanity's defiance might spread, and some, deep in their hearts, wanted it to. On the outer rim, hidden human fleets listened to the Council's fractured transmissions. Smiles crept across the faces of hardened soldiers. The enemy was no longer united. The laughter that once mocked Earth was gone, replaced by fear, anger, and doubt. Ambassador Marin stood in a dim war room aboard the supercarrier Eidolon. Around him, holograms flickered with intercepted messages. He listened to the counselors argue, threaten, and plead. Then he spoke to his commanders, his voice steady. The insult has broken them. They called us weak, but now they are divided. This is our chance. Captain Locke leaned forward, his scarred face lit by the glow of the maps. Divided enemies are easier to destroy. He said. Marin nodded. Not destroy, he whispered. Change, if we only kill. We are no better than them, but if we show the galaxy what survival means, they will follow us, and when they follow, the council will fall, beyond the council chamber. Riots spread across alien worlds. Slaves whispered of Earth, of humans who struck against their masters. Some called the humans saviors, others called them monsters. But everyone agreed on one truth: humans had shown what was possible. And once possibility is seen, it can never be forgotten. In the dark corridors of power, a counselor sent a secret message to Earth. It carried only 6 words: I will stand with you quietly. Humanity had begun to fracture the greatest empire in the galaxy, not with numbers, but with defiance. The insult that was meant to destroy them was now destroying the council itself. On the bridge of the Eidolon, Marin looked out into the stars behind him. The crew worked in silence, preparing the next phase. He thought of the council's laughter, the sound that had burned in his memory. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, his voice was cold. Let them break. We will be there when the pieces fall. Asterisk. The supercarrier awakens in the silence of deep space. A shadow stirred. For decades, it had slept under the crust of the dead moon, hidden beneath stone and dust. Only a few knew it existed. Fewer still had ever seen it. It was Earth's last secret, a weapon born of desperation, rebuilt with stolen knowledge, and fed with the insult that the galaxy had given. The Eidolon, humanity's supercarrier, opened its eyes. Its engines hummed low at first, then roared like thunder, shaking the caverns. Around it, dust fell from ceilings, rocks split apart, and lights blazed across the colossal hall. It was larger than any ship the council had ever seen. Not elegant, not beautiful, but terrifying. A monster made of black steel and human fury. Ambassador Marin stood on the viewing platform as the ship rose. Floodlights caught the sharp lines of its hull, its scars from old wars, its new plates forged from alien alloys. Every surface spoke of survival. It had been built from wrecks, from stolen tech, from scraps the galaxy had thrown away. But in human hands, those scraps had become a god of war. Bring her online, Captain Locke ordered, his voice like iron. Panels flickered, reactors screamed awake. One by one, weapon systems lit with red glow. Rail cannons the size of city towers rotated into place. Missile bays unlocked, opening like hungry mouths, and deep within its heart, a weapon hidden even from most of the crew, pulsed with quiet power. The Eidolon broke free of the moon's surface, stone crumbling away as its shadow stretched across the stars. Smaller ships circled it like wolves around a titan. Their crews watched in awe, their fear replaced by something stronger: belief. For the first time, they felt unstoppable. News of the awakening spread quickly. Scouts who glimpsed the carrier's silhouette fled in terror. Their reports reached the council within hours. Panic seized the chamber. This is impossible, the Supreme Speaker hissed, her voice trembling. No world, no race could build such a thing in secret. But the proof was before them. Humanity had done it. On slave worlds, whispers turned into cheers. The image of the Eidolon filled their hidden screens. The oppressed shouted the name Earth with reverence. They saw not just a ship, but a promise. If the humans could rise against the council, perhaps they could too, inside the carrier. Marin addressed his people. His voice carried through every deck, every corridor. They called us an insult, he said, and so we built the greatest insult of all. This ship is not only our weapon, it is our answer. They will see us not as beggars, not as scavengers, but as survivors who forge gods from ashes. The crew roared, pounding their fists against steel walls. their voices echoing like thunder. The insult had become fuel, and fuel had become fire. As the Eidolon left its hiding place, the stars seemed to shrink. Entire fleets of the Council watched from afar. Afraid to approach, they had mocked humanity. But now they faced something even they had not dreamed. A supercarrier that blotted out the suns. On the bridge, Captain Locke turned to Marin. "The galaxy will come for us now," he said. Marin's eyes were cold, steady. "Let them," he replied. "They wanted to call us an insult. Now they will choke on the word." In the Council, fear tore alliances apart. Some demanded the carrier be destroyed before it grew stronger. Others whispered that no fleet could stand against it. And still others, secretly, prayed to see it up close, not to fight, but to follow, because power like that could not be ignored for centuries. Humanity had been the smallest voice in the galaxy, but now their voice was a thunderclap. The Eidolon was not just a ship, it was a declaration, a promise carved in steel and fire, a promise that survival was not weakness, but strength. As the carrier's shadow fell across alien fleets, silence spread, no laughter, no mockery, only fear. The insult had awakened the storm, and the storm had named humanity. Asterisk, the Empire falls silent. The galaxy had always believed in the Empire's power. For centuries, their fleets ruled the stars. Their armies crushed rebellions before they could breathe. Their very name carried fear, a silence that bent entire worlds to their knees. But when the Eidolon rose, that silence broke, and the Empire trembled. The first major battle began on the edge of the Talros system. The Empire had gathered a fleet of 500 warships, each one larger than a city. They came with banners high, engines blazing, weapons locked on the human carrier. To them, it was meant to be a display of dominance, a reminder that no insult went unanswered, but humanity had come prepared. Captain Locke stood on the bridge of the Eidolon, his hand steady on the command rail. Before him, holograms lit the room with red dots, enemy ships closing fast around the carrier. Smaller human vessels shifted into formation, black shapes. Against the stars, they were outnumbered 10-1, but not outwilled. "Target the flagships," Locke ordered. Rail cannons roared, their shots cutting across the void like lightning. Alien shields shattered, their massive vessels torn open. In seconds, the galaxy had expected chaos from humans, wild desperation. Instead, they saw precision, every strike calculated, every blast merciless. Inside the Empire's fleet, panic spread. Commanders shouted overcomes, but their words drowned in screams. No strategy seemed to work. No maneuver brought safety. Everywhere they turned, human fire followed. The insult they had once laughed at was now carving them apart. On the surface of Talros Prime, civilians gathered in silence, watching the skies. For years, they had lived under the shadow of Empire fleets. Now, for the first time, they watched. Those same fleets burn. Some cheered, others prayed, but all knew something had changed. The Empire's silence had ended. Ambassador Marin stood in the war room of the Eidolon, his face lit by the glow of the battle. He listened to reports. Each one the same enemy ships destroyed, enemy commanders fleeing, but he did not smile. "Do not mistake this for victory," he said quietly. "This is only survival, survival written in fire." The Empire's admiral, desperate, ordered all ships to converge on the Eidolon. Hundreds of vessels turned their weapons on the supercarrier, the void filled with beams of energy, missiles and plasma fire. For a moment, the Eidolon disappeared in the storm, council members watching. From afar leaned forward, believing it was over. But then, the shadows moved, the carrier emerged from the storm, its shields glowing, scarred but unbroken. Weapons blazed from every side, tearing apart ships as though they were paper. Alien crews screamed as their vessels cracked and burned. The Empire's silence returned, but this time it was not the silence of control. It was the silence of fear. When the last flagship fell, its hull splitting in two, the void grew quiet. The human fleet floated victorious, scarred but alive. Bodies and wrecks drifted across the stars. The Empire's proud banners burned into ash. Captain Locke turned to Marin, his voice rough. "They will never laugh again," he said. Marin's eyes were cold, steady. "No," he answered. "They will remember. They called us an insult. But now they see what survival means." Across the galaxy, messages spread faster than light. The Empire's fleet has fallen. The humans have destroyed them. The insult has become power. Worlds that had once bowed to the Council now whispered of Earth. Slaves raised their heads, free voices echoing in hidden places, and the Empire, once feared above all, fell silent on Talros Prime. A young alien child looked up at the sky. She saw the human ships glowing above the ruins of the Empire's fleet. Her mother pulled her close, whispering, "Remember this day? The humans came." And the silence of the Empire was broken. Back aboard the Eidolon, Marin sent one message to the Council. It was short, clear, and final. "You called us an insult. We call it survival. Now survive us." The transmission ended. The galaxy listened in silence. And in that silence, every empire, every world, every slave knew the truth. The old order was broken. The insult had become the storm, and the storm carried the name of humanity *. Survival becomes power. The Empire had fallen silent. Its fleets broken, its power shattered, its voice lost among the stars. But where silence ruled, something else began to rise. The sound of rebellion, the sound of freedom, the sound of survival across the galaxy. Slaves tore down chains. Worlds that had bowed for centuries raised banners of defiance. And on every banner, one word was whispered: Earth. The insult once used to shame humanity had become a symbol of strength. On the bridge of the Eidolon, Ambassador Marin stood before his crew, his eyes heavy, his voice steady. "We did not fight to conquer," he said. "We did not fight to rule. We fought to survive. And in survival, we found power. Not power to destroy, but power to change." The crew listened, their faces scarred, their armor dented. They had seen horrors. They had lost friends. But their spirits burned brighter than ever, because they knew their fight had meaning. The insult that once cut them had now forged them into something the galaxy could not ignore. On distant worlds, alien leaders watched carefully. Some trembled in fear. Others leaned forward with hope. They saw humanity not as beggars or scavengers, but as builders of a new fire. And though the Council still clung to life, its walls cracked. Every day, more worlds slipped from its grasp. Every day, more voices turned toward Earth. In the Council chamber, the Supreme Speaker pounded her staff in rage. "They are monsters," she cried. "They are destroyers. They are chaos." But the chamber no longer echoed with laughter. It echoed with silence, and silence was worse, because silence meant doubt. Silence meant fear. In the shadows, counselors whispered, "Perhaps we should side with them." Some said, "Perhaps survival is not an insult, but the only truth." The alliance that had ruled the stars for centuries was no longer unbreakable. It was crumbling, piece by piece, under the weight of one word: humanity. Back aboard the carrier, Captain Locke joined Marin on the observation deck. Stars stretched, endless before them, but they no longer looked distant. They looked close, reachable, as though humanity's hand could now touch them all. "They will never forgive us," Locke said. "Good," Marin replied, his eyes fixed on the stars. "We do not need forgiveness. We need survival. And survival has already made us powerful." On Veyros, the once slave world, children ran through streets that had once been cages. They played beneath human flags painted on broken walls. To them, the humans were not monsters, not destroyers. They were the ones who answered when no one else dared. They were the ones who turned insult into hope, The galaxy was changing, and Earth stood at the center, not because of wealth, not because of numbers, but because they had endured, because they had been mocked and broken, and yet refused to kneel. Humanity had shown that survival itself was power, and power could not be ignored. At the next gathering of the council, Marin entered, not as a beggar, but as a storm. The chamber fell silent as he placed the Earth's flag on the central table. He looked at every face, every species, and spoke with the same steady voice that once carried defiance alone. "You called us an insult," he said, "but insults do not bow, insults do not fade, insults survive, and in survival they become stronger than fear. We are not your insult. We are your reminder, the reminder that survival is power, and power now has a human face." No one laughed, no one mocked. The council sat in silence, forced to listen, because the galaxy knew the truth. The insult had been transformed, and in that transformation, humanity had risen, far across the stars. In the quiet hearts of those once forgotten, a new era began. An era where survival was no longer shame, but strength. An era where Earth stood not as outcasts, but as leaders. The insult had become the banner of the free. The insult had become the name whispered with hope. The insult had become power. And so the galaxy learned, too late, that survival was never weakness. It was the sharpest weapon of all. And humanity carried it like fire. Fire that would never die. Asterisk.